Joining us right now to discuss this, he's got one of the coolest names of anyone in government ever, Chad Wolf, former acting DHS secretary. And of course, he's also with the Heritage Foundation. He's a visiting fellow there. Chad, very good to see you. You've been talking about this. This has been, I mean, obviously, in while you were with the Trump administration and even during the transition period, I mean, this has been a huge concern to you. I'm reading that the numbers at the border are anywhere from 4 to 6 times what they were under the peak of the Obama administration. What can you tell us? Because there's been kind of a media blackout, and the Biden administration hasn't been very forthcoming.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. The numbers that we saw in February, just to answer your question, are about over 100,000 illegal apprehensions in the month of February. We know that number in March is going to be even higher when the month concludes. For February, that's about the 4th highest February as far as overall illegal apprehensions in the history of the Border Patrol keeping these types of stats. So what we know at this time, and in January and February, you've got to remember these are not really historically high travel months. It's certainly in March, April, May, June, when the weather improves, that you're going to see even larger numbers. So the fact that there is a crisis right now on the border, that you have FEMA down there, that you have HHS building facilities, you have DOD looking at building facilities, everything is pointing to it being a crisis, it being overwhelming. And unfortunately, it didn't have to happen. This is a self-inflicted crisis the Biden administration created because not only of their messaging, but also of the policies that they tore down from the previous administration since Inauguration Day.
Yes, everything from putting the moratorium on deportations, the ceasing of the the remain in Mexico policy for asylum seekers. I mean, there's even, we don't even know if everybody's even being tested that's coming through. One of the things that we've heard at press conferences, Jen Psaki had mentioned this recently from the Biden administration, as well as the border, the border coordinator, the Biden border coordinator, saying that, well, we're not actually expelling unaccompanied children. But yet I'm also kind of reading that isn't the case either. You know the answer to this. What do you say to that?
Well, so I think there's a couple of things to think about when we talk about unaccompanied alien children. Right now, today, the Biden administration, even though they say they are not expelling unaccompanied alien children, they are in fact expelling them. If you are from Mexico and you are an unaccompanied child, they will return you to Mexico. What they are not doing, unfortunately, is individuals from Central America or Northern Triangle, they are not returning those children back to Mexico as we did under the Trump administration, which was very effective at the time because of a public health emergency. They are choosing not to do that. And by doing that, they said it. And unfortunately, the secretary said it again yesterday before a hearing where he said, if your child comes to the border, we will not turn them away. We will not expel them. That is a green light for every family that wants to send their child in the hand of a smuggler, a trafficker, or a cartel to do that, because they have just been given a guarantee by the Biden administration that child will stay here in the U.S. So you're going to see the numbers of UACs skyrocket in the very near future because of messaging just like that.
Wow. And the remain in Mexico policy, this was something under the Trump administration, and we're speaking with Chad Wolf, who was former acting DHS secretary. There was an agreement between former President Trump and leaders of some of not just Mexico, but other Central American countries, where they were kind of helping each other out. We'll prevent this deluge at your border. But how is that even being handled? Because I see some reports that the current Mexican president apparently is doing more about the border than the United States president at this moment.
Well, that's right. Well, they've dismantled the MPP program that you described there. The idea behind that program was to make sure that again, you got to think almost everyone coming in to the U.S. is claiming some type of asylum, some type of persecution from their home government and the like. And what we know is about 90% of them do not qualify. So the idea of MPP was if you want to apply for asylum, you can do that, but you need to wait in Mexico, which is safe, in order to do that. What we know is the vast majority of folks did not want to wait there because they knew their asylum claim was fraudulent. They knew that they weren't going to pass and therefore be let into the U.S. Instead, what they would like to do, the Biden administration is allowing them to do, is to stay here in the U.S. for 6 months to 12 months or 18 months before they even see an immigration judge. And that's even if they show up. So there's a number of problems. When they talk about asylum, they talk about the Trump administration dismantling the asylum process, couldn't be further from the truth. We hired over 500 asylum officers during the 4 years. In fact, during the 4 years of the Trump administration, we gave more asylum to individuals than the last 4 years of the Obama administration. So when you look at the facts and you look at what they're saying, it just doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't add up at all. I wanted to ask you about some of the media blackout with this. I mean, even when under former President Obama, when I went down to the border, I was able to go and look at everywhere, talk to anybody. Under the Trump administration, there was complete and total transparency. Border agents weren't told that they couldn't talk to members of the press. But now, oddly, the press that always talked about the sanctity of a free press doesn't seem to be as interested. There have only been a couple of questions to Jen Psaki about this. It was according to reports, it was a verbal order that was given to Border Patrol agents to not speak to members of the press about certain things. No ride-alongs, no definitive numbers given, which seems, there's a crisis at the border, a humanitarian crisis. We're sending FEMA down there. It seems like Americans should know about this. This was a quick change after Biden took office. Give me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Biden administration, a couple of things that they campaigned on. One was unity, but they also campaigned on transparency. And so this is actually the least transparent thing that they could do, which is not allowing media into some of these facilities. Look, I understand they've got to protect some privacy issues associated with some of these facilities, but you can do that. We did that under the Trump administration. We took camera crews and press into our family residential centers where we kept families. We showed them, we were able to give them access. There is a way to do it if there is a will to do it. It appears, though, there's not a will to do it right now because they are concerned on what type of images that are going to be shown because of the crowding, because of some of these facilities, because the sheer number of individuals coming across this border is a capacity issue like any other. And I think my overall concern is when you hear about solutions or you hear about actions they are taking, they are treating this as though it's a capacity issue. And if you increase the number of people that can take care of these folks, then you'll solve that issue. And that's not the case. What we need to start talking about is how to enforce the law along that border, get back to the rule of law, and get back to holding folks accountable for breaking the law. Otherwise, you're going to see no end in sight. And you're going to continue to see these numbers, unfortunately, on the border.
Yeah, we're speaking with Chad Wolf, who was former acting DHS secretary under the Trump administration. Speaking to that, so many individuals, we have so many markets that are near the border. We're in McAllen, we're, parts of New Mexico, Arizona, et cetera. And the people who live along the border and individuals in these towns, not all of them are Republican or conservative. There's, Democrats down there, but they all are on this common ground of, okay, this is a problem, we have to address it, not just because of the security issue, but also the resources. You have the federal government that is demanding essentially open borders, barring border agents from doing their jobs, and yet also at the same time telling everyone that they can't celebrate Independence Day because we're in a pandemic, but we can let anyone across the border and maybe half of them will be tested before being loaded upon buses with no documentation of testing or even a positive status and then sent throughout the rest of the country. And so all of it's pretty much generally agreed upon that this is becoming such an issue. I guess the question is, will it become such a concern for Democrats? Will that pressure intensify to where you think that the Biden administration is going to finally be forced to do something about the results of these orders that they have implemented?
Well, I believe they will. And I think you've already seen that. You alluded to a little bit of that already, Dana. You see a number of Democratic congressmen along that border, even mayors starting to say, we have a real problem here. And the current administration's approach is not solving that problem. These communities along the border are going to be the ones that feel the impact of these thousands of families and others that are being released. And it's not going to be on DHS or the federal government to bear those costs. It's going to be on those communities. And it's certainly the wrong approach. And, again, I feel for law enforcement along that border because they're going to have to deal with the public safety concerns and other issues they're going to deal with. And it begins to be a real concern. It goes much beyond just a capacity in holding these folks and deciding what to do with them. It goes to, really public health issues and other issues along that border. And so it's certainly a real concern.
Yeah. Last question for you. We're speaking with Chad Wolf. read stories, numerous reports, border chiefs saying we need help, we need more resources, we need more boots on the ground. Other organizations pleading for volunteers. They're saying we're completely overrun. The administration's not being forthright about what we're really dealing with down here. What is, in terms of the lay of the land, when you left office, what did it, how I know that we always struggled keeping border agents under the Obama administration. I mean, when the two individuals that I met just had they had a couple of 100 miles between them that they had to monitor at the border, which I have no idea. That looked like the hardest job ever. And under the Trump administration, thankfully, more resources were diverted to this. When you left, what was the state of resources that were allocated at the border in terms of, that human component? How many boots on the ground, so to speak, did we have there?
Well, unfortunately, during the 4 years of the Trump administration, every budget that we put forth there called for an increase in Border Patrol agents, CBP agents, and ICE agents, all needed to do that enforcement job along the border. And unfortunately, almost every year, Congress told us no. They would be happy to provide more resources to CBP and for the Border Patrol, but not for more agents. And that's unfortunate. So what does that mean? It means you have to do more with less over time. You have to rely on technology and you have to rely on others. And so that's why the construction of the border wall system was so important. And I think that got lost in a lot of the politics of it because it allowed us to put a physical barrier in areas that were very hard to patrol so that we could take agents and redeploy them to other areas that we knew were needed. And when you stop border wall construction and there are gaps in that border wall system, you're now having to use agents where you hadn't planned to use agents before. Yeah. So instead of one agent with a border wall system covering several miles, you're now going to need several agents to cover 1 mile. And so it becomes a resource issue because there's politics being played with that border wall system. If you were to ask agents, what do they need? Almost every one of them will tell you an effective impedance and denial, an effective border wall system that allows them to respond and to apprehend those individuals. And they don't have that any longer. And that's unfortunate. And so I think, the Biden administration will have to figure out how they do that. They will have to figure out a right mix of technology as well as boots on the ground. But it's not going to solve their problem.
Goodness. Yeah, that was that force multiplier that we've heard from so many chiefs and agents that we've had on the program to discuss that. Chad Wolf, it's a pleasure talking with you about this, and hopefully we can fix this situation. Not now, then maybe hopefully in 2024 we can get this done. Thank you so much for your time today, Chad.